This story is about the amazing world of magic, in which there are 4 countries, 20 nations, and several amazing kinds of people. The events begin in a modern city, where you can meet a large number of high rises, small flying objects, and people, each unique in their own way. Not long ago, the age of ordinary magic has passed, and today the so-called world of Magic Rondel is very advanced in terms of magical technology. The locals refer to this time as the age of magical progress. Even today, concepts like moving from point A to point B through a portal are as commonplace as the subway. However, despite the advanced technology, Rondel is still feudal, which means that the countries are ruled by kings and nobles. Therefore, class inequality is still in force. The poor, roughly speaking by choice, do not mind becoming slaves of the rich to somehow survive in such harsh conditions. And back on December 29, 1999, according to the magical calendar, just one day before the new century Archimagus Rondel announced his will, this event turned the whole world upside down. The idea was that he hid all his heritage in completely different corners of the world. The one who eventually manages to find these treasures, the one who will take his place. The prize is very worthy, and clearly worth fighting for it. Unfortunately or fortunately, a large number of people were of the same opinion. The Grand Enchanter who made this statement was the founder of Rondel, and offered a hand in the establishment of this world as a technological civilization. He was also the Archduke of a growing empire. His name was Lucas, Supreme Enchanter of the 9th District. In the history of this world, there were only 3 people who reached the 9th level. He had no children, no successor, but his knowledge and power were great. So whoever could find the treasure would have everything he could ever dream of. And so the people began their pursuit of the fate of Archmage Lucas. About all this continuously found news radiated speculation. The dungeon where the Great Master lived is located in the Dragon Wasteland, treasure hidden in the Alliance country of Elysian, a famous offshore country. And the celestial fortress of Lucas is located in the Storm Sea, at the center of the world. Regardless of their nationality, race, or rank, a large number of people, without much thought, with a cold head, went in search of this treasure. But as they say, rumors are rumors, and among the people quietly began to discuss various theories, in what other places can be hidden treasures. All this talk started for a reason. After a long period of time no one has been able to find anything. Many people began to investigate, but could not find any clue, which could lead them to the fate of the Archmage, and so it's been 20 years. One day, a young boy named Travis finally found his destiny as Lucas. Who would have thought that only after such a long time, someone would still be able to do it? Let's see how it was. For this purpose, let's go back to the events of 2007 on the magical calendar, Castle Lawrence. At that time our hero was a very young child, but very promising. At least because at such a young age he was interested in science, and read a lot of books. But there's a reason he's so smart, because he was reborn in this body, and he remembers his past life. The end of his past life was pretty boring. Travis was in the army and was only a month away from demobilization, but he lost his life in an accident. The truck he was riding in simply rolled over, and when he opened his eyes, it was no longer in the Republic of South Korea, but in the Kingdom of Rhaegar. Up to this point, the guy lived in the middle class, and did not even think much about how things are with rich people. But in this life, he became the second son of a wealthy viscount, and lived in a huge, luxurious estate. Initially Travis was very alarmed, but then with his bright head he realized that the experience from his past life could help him a lot in his new one. While all his peers were engrossed in games and other childish activities, the boy was greedily striving for knowledge. He had a 100% chance of always exceeding the expectations of his father's entourage, thus receiving a lot of attention from influential people, but not everything was so serene. Rondel was a civilization more technologically advanced than mankind in the 21st century, so the knowledge of human science was of little help. So at one point I had to completely retrain myself and upgrade my skills to the current standards. As you can see, it's not an easy task, but you have to keep acting like a genius, and be able to answer questions that your father or his friends might ask. But one day, Travis was able to fully experience that this life is not as easy as it may seem at first glance. When the boy was only 7 years old, someone tried to poison him. The consequences were terrible. He was constantly fainting, and when he coughed, blood came out of his mouth. When Travis' condition was more or less stabilized, he was put to bed and further treatment was prescribed. The doctors also reported that the patient was very lucky. If they had been even a few minutes late, it could have ended much more incarnate. The culprit of all this was obvious, but without evidence such things cannot be loudly declared. The main suspicion fell on his father's first wife, Anna. Travis himself was the son of a commoner, and a bone in his ex-wife's throat because his father loved him more than her son. The only good thing about this world is that it's technologically advanced, but the state system is so backward. You can't just accuse Anna without evidence, but why doesn't the father try to resolve the situation? There's no way he doesn't suspect her. Based on this, it can be assumed that he simply turns a blind eye to it. It was at that moment that the kid made a firm decision for himself, never again build himself a young talent. Then from that moment about 10 years passed. It was May 1st, 2019, according to the magic calendar. One day the guy came to the virtual reality capsule store. Since he was quite a famous person, even the cashiers at the sight of him began to talk quietly among each other, and in a good sense went crazy. They couldn't believe it was the son of Viscount Lawrence himself standing in front of them. And when the guy asked for help, he was served in the best way, and with great pleasure answered all questions. Today he wanted to buy Chronicle Online eyeglasses cards, but for some reason he couldn't find them. As it turned out, all this time they were just lying near the cash register. Travis was very happy that they were here, and said that he bought them all. When the guy left the store, the workers ducked in front of him, and the newcomer, who, though whispering, but began to talk nonsense, had to be scolded a little, because for insulting a nobleman is punishable by law. The salesmen were also very surprised that Travis had decided to come to the store in person instead of sending a servant, because he shouldn't have to do it himself. The girl who has been working here for a long time told me that he comes here 2 or 3 times a month. Apparently the gentleman is very fond of online games. Those coupons have about 5 million worth of loot inside the game currency. That's really a lot, and in Korean won, it would be about the same amount. Suddenly, the servant reported the operative information that Brother Oliver had come to visit. When he arrived home, his mom greeted her son with a very frightened look on her face. Travis immediately asked her where his brother was. In principle, he didn't even have to look for him. He came himself and immediately with claims. He is not satisfied with the fact that the guy is again walking around the city on foot, because it is very dangerous. Any bandit can attack and do something very bad. But hearing these words from Oliver is quite funny, because he himself is not hiding, and this is a portrait of the reputation no less. Travis decides not to cross him, because this gig's only gonna drag on. Usually his brother comes exclusively on business, and this time was no exception. According to Oliver, his father wants him to take control of an important case called farce distributing. In Earth terms, the nobles of Rondell are both oligarchs and statesmen, which naturally means they own a lot of businesses. Farce Distributors is a mining company, one of those owned by the Lawrence family. I can see why the brother broke in here. He's just a greedy and incompetent man. Travis had told him that he had no claim to anything and didn't want anything to do with the family business. Oliver was glad that his potential rival had figured it out quickly. The guy took the opportunity to tell me that he had bought his loot from online games, so he was doing well. Of course his brother laughed out loud, then praised him and told him to keep it up. From that day on, Oliver didn't feel like he was competing with him at all, the video game loot bag speaking for itself. To be honest, his mother was a little concerned about this decision. It was really necessary to give up such a rich inheritance. Since Travis was 100% sure of his actions, he was not a bit sorry. It is better under no circumstances do not interfere in matters in which there is close contact with his brother. After the attempted poisoning, Travis stopped striving to study and distanced himself from everyone, including even his own heirs. And now his first priority is gaming, where he spends most of his free time. He also urges all of his servants not to distract him with trivial matters, so as not to interrupt the game process. Probably the father did not need the son of a commoner, who is not yet a genius, so over time, their close contact stopped, and thanks to this, the guy never again got into dangerous situations for his life. As a result, Travis spent the next 10 years living as an invisible shadow in his virtual world. After graduating from the academy, he and his mother decided to leave the estate. Many acquaintances, and even servants, quietly condemned the guy for such a weak position, to hide from the whole world and not to have his say. In fact, most of the workers in this house came from Anna's side, so Travis has to think several times before he says anything out loud, which is stressful to say the least. But since the guy has recently moved to a new house, that problem has been solved. For someone to play online games, it is an escape from reality. But not for Travis. Such a brilliant man would never and for no reason would not allow himself to just so live his life. As in the real world for the guy was a total surveillance, he found a way out of this situation. It's a game called Chronicle Online. All abilities acquired in this game are displayed in reality. If someone again wants to conduct total surveillance, he will be able to do it exclusively through the game. In the real world, the guy actually sits in one place and just burns time. 10 years ago, when the guy entered the Royal Academy, he was assigned to write an essay about Lucas, and while searching for information he found something completely unexpected. Family Creed Lucas could not be interpreted in any way other than the English word why. But here the question arises, how could he even know English? In his childhood, the boy had read a lot about it, but he constantly lacked evidence to support this theory, so he wrote it off as a coincidence. However, it soon became obvious. And his last words before he passed away were that I would so like to walk on a California beach with Mary again. As these words are recorded in the Archduke's biography, compiled by his butler, it is clear that this cannot be a coincidence. The Grand Archmage of Rondel, 100% was an Earthling, just like Travis, so with great enthusiasm the lad continued his investigation, and every day he found more and more irrefutable evidence that he was indeed from the human world. The fact that Travis himself was from the world of humans, he was very useful in the task of finding the destiny, which Lucas left to his descendants, and finally after a huge period of time, the guy was finally able to get it. All these years of sitting in the virtual world were not in vain. Now, for the rest of his life, he's gonna be the cheese in the butter, and his brother won't even be able to stand next to him. But apparently it was too soon to be happy. Some unknown person threw an axe at the guy and caught his arm, which caused blood to gush out. Despite the fact that Travis was in the game, he felt incredible pain, and was already ready to take revenge. No one dares to injure him just like that. To be honest, as soon as he got to the treasure, life turned into true misery. Sometimes a guy is tormented by the question of whether it was worth it to him at all. Lucas' fate was hidden in a very unexpected place, namely an online game, a virtual world. This world itself is outwardly indistinguishable from reality, but nevertheless it is a game, and for ordinary players there is no sense of pain in it, but Travis feels pain, and every fight costs him too much. Lucas in his will chose not to tell that when receiving the fate of an archmage, the man moves his body into the game reality. You can't even tell people about this, because no one will believe it. They'll give you the number of a mental hospital. But for now, you have to think of the safest way to separate this rabid goblin, because he was just mindlessly running forward. It wasn't hard to do. For such an easy victory, Travis received a level increase, and the opportunity to change occupation. Then the screen flashed a notification that the main god Ariel will now move the guy to the secret place. For the entire time of the game such a situation occurred for the first time. The only disadvantage of this game is that the synchronization of course for a long time does not make itself known in reality. It is necessary to wait a certain period of time for all achievements to transfer, as suddenly in the middle of this bright white room form a door. Before entering it, The screen asks if the player wants to go up to the second floor of Lucas's magic tower. Of course Travis does, so it doesn't take long to get there. After moving, he finds himself in his office. It's so strange. On the first floor there was nothing, but here it's different. 1,000 books on racks, and the very first treasure chest so far. As a reward, the guy got 5 trillion loot. You have to enter your account name to get that amount. He finally saw what it really looks like as a reward. But there's one downside. Unfortunately, it can't be converted into real money. However, it is not money that is the most important thing here. From that moment, Travis got a job as a mage, and now for this period of time he has no right to leave the game, otherwise his physical body can be damaged. Before this event, one could only see health and mana points. Generally, they were not seen as something unusual, but it was a different thing to feel magical energy in real life. To feel the mana swirling around inside your chest was something incredible. Well, since it all started so suddenly, why not learn the spells that are appropriate for a guy at this stage of magical development? I'm sure these books are there for a reason. As soon as he reached out to grab one of them, the system stopped him and asked him what he wanted to read. It's a very convenient feature, the way a library of the best mage of mankind should be. At one point Travis began to have a bad headache, all this because, in games it's too convenient to read books. With just a single click, the information is instantly downloaded consciousness. But the guy at the moment feels only nausea and pain from this abrupt process of recording information in the brain. But for today it was necessary to read one more, the last one. This book is about hiding magic, teaches you to hide its presence and the amount of mana. True, if the potential opponent has already reached the 7th level, then such a technique against him will not work. But since the guy lives in an environment where there are no decent magicians, this option would be the best for him, to hide who he really is. Since my body was already very tired, I had to experience maximum discomfort this time. Travis and by no means hoped to quickly reach the level of Lucas. But this is only a microscopic step forward. In the future there is still so much to do that it is even scary to think about it. But for the sake of what awaits him at the very end, he is ready for absolutely everything. The next morning, the boy was already actively practicing sports on the training ground of the manor. His trainer was a trusted person and knight of the guard, Andreas. The man was pleasantly surprised at the results he saw, and at the fact that the Lord wanted to practice with the sword at all. To take away any suspicion from you, Travis said that recently felt out of shape, so he decided to do a little exercise. In fact, he did it for the game, because training in reality will also have a positive effect on the character. There's also a clear sense of how the circle of magic that was instilled in the guy yesterday is developing, and the stamina is growing rapidly. It seems like the level up was immediately reflected in the real world. So it can be assumed that in the future, skills can be used outside of the game as well. Andreas decided not to be modest, and directly asked the gentleman, why is he in such a good mood? Did something good happen in his life? Travis already realized that he had it all written on his face, so he decided to confess a little bit, that he received a good reward in the game. The people who were standing nearby heard this conversation, and immediately began to condemn the boy, calling him some kind of deviant, because at that age, except for games, he is not interested in anything else. Andreas heard this rotten talk and wanted to intercede, but Mr. urgently asked him not to. He was madly pleased that they were worried about him, but the knight does not even suspect that the guy is only pretending to be harmless. Behave like this is simply necessary, at least to survive. Since the training was over, it was necessary to immediately go to play. There was a lot to do. The first thing you need to do, the most pleasant, namely spend money. For this you need to download the catalog of goods, and start buying everything that only the eyes see. As one wise man said, the most important thing in online games is thick wallet, then the process of the game will go much more pleasant. Not once in the course of the game, the guy noticed that he has a bad stamina. To somehow compensate for this shortcoming, he decided to buy the function of the companion prizes, to distract all the opponents. But a small disadvantage of it is that it will take away the experience that the player could get himself. In this case, the guy decided not to be trifling, and to choose the most expensive companion, so that certainly he could help him. Unfortunately, as it turned out, this is not an easy task, the choice is too bad. And even at the moment when Travis finally made up his mind, there was a dilemma. It turns out that the satellite is taken only once and forever, and in the future cannot be changed. This is outrageous, because usually the satellite can be changed at any time, but specifically in this game's satellite tank is an exception. But even so, in the end the guy decided to take the best, surely he will last a long time. After the purchase began registration of the satellite, around were such bright special effects that could be blinded, but you bet, for such a large amount of money should be not only special effects. In general, this lucky girl was a girl Clara, in the armor called Heavenly Steel. She had such a stony expression on her face, as if she had summoned some golem that only had the appearance of a human, but she was very beautiful in general. It was decided not to waste time and go straight to practice. Clara without any problems coped with the goblins, and the guy at this point used the skill magic arrow. Somehow at one point the guys got too carried away, and the guy noticed that he had already increased his level to 20, even the loss in experience was not so significant, but this is for now, because in the future the satellite will take more and more experience. When a notification appeared on the screen, Travis was warned that he had been in the game for 15 hours and was urged to leave and rest, so that he could come back with new strength. The guy decided not to ignore the warning, because his health comes first, and left the game. He's been tired for the past 15 hours, but it's been a productive day. He needs to rest a bit, and go to the training ground to stretch. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he notices a body standing in the room. He sharply turns on the light, and to see the companion he had recently bought in the game, to put it mildly, he was very frightened. In his head there was only one question: how she got here. As it turned out, it was even possible to communicate with her, but she answered mostly as a programmed robot, so it is unlikely to get a normal dialogue with her. But nevertheless she still managed to tell how she manages to materialize in the real world. She was created by Archduke Lucas, and basically all the armor she's wearing. It says that Clara is part of his legacy. Travis certainly doesn't want to be picked on, but why didn't Lucas warn him about it beforehand? If the guy had known it would be like this, he probably would have looked for another companion. As it turns out, Clara also has her own stats in this real world, and if you take her skills to the max, she's as strong as a Grand Master. According to the level of mages, she will be able to instill herself with a level 8 circle, and Reingarth itself is now the strongest level 7 mage. In the world of level 8 mages, there are only 8 people. I wonder for what purpose Lucas created such a monster. However, in any case, having such a loyal, strong and executive companion will be very good. But the only question is where to hide it in the real world. You can only bring her back to the game world at the same time she was sent here, which is 24 hours later. In that case, Travis asked her to make sure to use the mana hiding function. In a moment the protective field around her armor disappeared, and so did her mana. It's a good thing she can do that, otherwise the knights would have recognized her, and there would have been big trouble. Well, that's much better. Now the girl looks more like an ordinary person, except for the very expensive armor she's wearing. Travis has already leveled her reputation. It is impossible to make mistakes in any case. So the guy quickly got for her some beautiful dress, asked to change, and the guys together went to the house. There, of course, they immediately began to discuss. Everyone was extremely curious about what kind of girl comes to the gentleman. Envious people wished them nothing but the worst, and people close to them constantly asked them when they were going to get married, even though they had been together for only one day. To put it mildly, such questions pissed them off, especially when the girl was called a commoner. Before starting, out of curiosity, the guy asked what happens to the girl's body when she is here in the game. The girl said that it switches to eco mode. It looks like she is sleeping, but for safety she always has alerts turned on, and in case of any problems she can come to the rescue. This is just great news, so if there are any problems in reality, the guy will know about it right away. But it is not surprising, The quest was about to begin, and literally within a few seconds, in front of the guys appears a huge warrior orc, who really had a large amount of health. As it turned out, the opponent also knows how to talk, of course, except for threats, he could not utter anything else. But this was not the last surprise. The system sent a new notification, which said that the use of disposable attacks such as bombs and scrolls for the duration of the battle is forbidden. Of course, this makes the task even more difficult, because as a rule Travis always uses such things. The first attack was repulsed by Carla's shield without any problems, but the monster didn't have enough strength to penetrate it. While it stood there in bewilderment, the guy didn't waste a minute and started shooting. He tried to do it with maximum aim, so that each hit would bring its results. Thanks to this, one of the few bullets that were fired managed to hit him in the eye, which was great news, and thanks to the fact that Travis was wearing all sorts of magic-enhancing robes and artifacts, his spells were many times stronger than those of a first-level mage. If this monster is lower in level, then right now, it should lose its life with just one accurate shot. But unfortunately, this monster still found the strength to attack again, but this magnificent shield will not allow it to do any damage anyway. As the battle progressed, Travis began to enjoy himself. If you look closely, you can see that the orc still has quite a few health points, but it is obvious that he is seriously wounded, and this is not an exact figure. However, despite being wounded, he is still throwing some pretty powerful blows. If he hadn't had a companion here, Travis would have lost his life with 100% probability from the first blow. It was definitely a wise decision to buy her. You could say she has already paid for herself. To say that the attack of such an enemy is not frightening would be a complete lie, but Carla is clearly calmer. As soon as the moment was right, and the right amount of mana was collected, the guy used a skill called digging. This led to the fact that right under the feet of the monster began to fail. Of course he tripped and fell down right on the hard asphalt. You cannot at such low levels, in any case you cannot give the fear of the opportunity to take over the mind, the most important thing to be ready for any outcome, and act on the basis of the situation. Now right in front of your eyes, there is a very real humiliation and domination over the opponent. To make fun of him a little, the guys left him 50 health units and decided to see what would happen next. In the end, this stubborn orc did not understand anything and continued to make attempts to attack, and he does so confidently, as if he had not 50 health units but 50.000. In the end, Travis just fired the last shot that ended this rather interesting duel. He got a whole bunch of nice bonuses for that, and the opportunity for the senior to go up and down the floors. It was already late at night, and the man was just standing at the window looking out, when suddenly Anna came up to him and started asking him how he was doing, what he was thinking about. The first thing that came to her mind was that the Vicomte was worried about the girl Travis had brought to the manor. He answered no questions to her, but just handed her a letter. This was a notice of the start of the conscription campaign. As war is imminent in the Croatian Empire, all nobles are required to report with an army for muster. Her father personally must report with 5 advanced troops, amounting to 50 kings and 1,000 infantry. The first thing she did was to beg her ex-husband not to send her son to war, and to consider Travis' candidacy in more detail, because in her opinion he's not good for anything but playing with toys all day long. Maybe there he can justify his right to bear such a big name. Of course Lawrence as a father did not like such words. Anna never remembered Travis in principle, and now she wants him to give his life. Father said he'd only send Travis to fight if Anna agreed that when he returned, the boy would have complete independence, and would no longer be threatened, no more spying or anything like that. It's a pretty fair exchange, and everyone has to keep their terms. In the meantime, the guy was in full swing training. The coach began to admire him even more, because Mr. Every Day, thanks to training, he is getting stronger and stronger. The fact that he was getting stronger is a fact, but unfortunately or fortunately, it was not only the training that helped him, but mostly the game. Reward for the quest: Travis liked it very much. He was given a large amount of gold, and the second level of magic. He also received a hidden vault. It is similar to an inventory, In the game, it is an invisible space in which you can store things. Logi, there you can almost anything. Since the floristics in the game are displayed in reality, the guy has every chance to become a mage while having the physical strength of a knight. If Travis fully masters the entire Lucas legacy, he may even become greater than him in the future, but it's a long way off. Suddenly a man came up to the guys and told them that his father was calling him for an urgent conversation. Of course, it made him very wary at the moment, for his father never called him out of the blue. A couple of days later, the whole family gathered at the Lawrence estate. The boy couldn't sleep well for 2 nights, constantly thinking about the future conversation with his father, but now everything was falling into place. Oliver, as usual, tried to humiliate his brother in front of everyone. In his opinion, it was the weakling who couldn't represent the family in the war. On the one hand, his father agrees with him, but on the other hand, he can't risk Oliver, because he is the only heir of the family of the estate. Of course, Travis can't be risked either, but he's considered a less valuable heir, because his mother is a commoner. So the father called his son here to declare in front of everyone that he's the least important one here. The guy's starting to get really angry, but on the bright side, there's a silver lining. Travis will be able to take his VR glasses with him, and no one will dare to stop him from playing, thanks to his position. But most importantly, after he leaves, there's no more total surveillance from Anna. All in all, it's the best thing that's happened in a long time. The boy said that he was ready to go to war and be a representative of the family. His father was very grateful to him for agreeing and not showing any aggression. His brother at the same moment almost went crazy. Of course he respects his father's decision, but if Travis will disgrace the family at the front, he will not leave it like that. Actually, it sounds as funny as possible, because he says it to his brother, who's going to fight in his place. He is of course an adult in age, but not in character. He is probably just spoiled. Also, when everyone started to leave, his father asked Travis to stay behind to talk to him one-on-one. He even sent the guard away. I wonder what he has to say that's so important. In general, his father said that if Travis returned safely, he and his mother would be resettled in the royal lands. It would be his reward for going in his brother's place. He would be able to enjoy complete freedom. To be honest, Travis was a little shocked by what he heard, but at least he didn't let it show, because he can't believe 100% of what he's told. Unfortunately, his father has proven himself to be a man who can't be trusted. And at the very least, you have to come back from the front alive. Before saying goodbye, Lawrence gave his son 2 very important items that should help in the war, namely Class 5 and Class 7 defense field rings. These artifacts are very valuable, but it's the only thing his father can do to help. He also asked to be attentive at all times, and not to ignore any operational information from the commanders. By the way, Anna and her son Oliver were watching this little conversation from the corner, wondering if they had heard something interesting or not. To put it mildly, Travis did not like it very much that they peeped, and so all his life, no issue is not solved without their participation. When Mr. tried to poison all years, his father's reaction was a blow to him, and then in the future he disappointed him many more times. But no matter how it goes around, only enemies, and the only one who can be trusted it is the father. In general, the guy promised that he would definitely come back, and do not even think of writing him off. It was late evening. Lawrence sat in his living room, and began to feel a strong headache. To somehow reduce it, his father used a magic ring, and applied the skill of pain reduction. All this happened because of strong nerves and worries. Deep down the father realized that his son, since he was poisoned, all the time behaved so on purpose, so as not to attract special attention. At the same time his mother was crying bitterly. Mostly she was worried that Anna would not send some bad man to her son at the front. Travis, in turn, thought it would be even better to let them commit a big crime, so it would be easier to eliminate them in the future. By the way, it's not worth worrying about what someone heard, because Clara is standing on the stream and collecting information. In general, from this day Travis is no longer going to tolerate. Very soon he will put an end to it. You just need to wait a little, and everything will work out in the best way. In 2 days the troops are already more fully assembled and staffed. The whole group got on the plane and went to war. At the very last moment, the guy decided to take Carla with him. Some people had a lot of questions. They could not understand how can you take your beloved with you to the war, because this is clearly not the place where there will be girls on a date. Travis immediately asked to close the matter, because she was there as a secretary, the only person he could fully trust. She couldn't really be left at home, because she would defend her master to the last drop of blood. Especially lately it has been very much pumped up, and is already very close in level to the highest knighthood. Also to prepare for the war, the guy spent 200 million gold in 2 days. Also for the money he finished the 3rd level of the quest. So he's not far from level 4, the rewards for level 3 were 3, each worth 100 million gold. That's 3 vials of the universal panacea. They're now lying in the vault waiting for their time, so you could say it was a very timely reward. The guy warned everyone that he would go to the room. If something important happened, he would be sure to messenger him. The phrase, messenger, already raised a lot of questions. Travis explained that he was going to play online games. That's when the guys were stumped. Officer of the advanced squad, I couldn't help but speak my mind. Is this really the time for games? If anyone finds out about this, the whole group will be looked at as identical because their commander is just playing games during such important events. Travis's reputation is bad enough as it is, and now he's got a girl with him and wants to lock himself in his room. But the girl is understandable, she's beautiful, but everything else is just too much. Suddenly one of the commanders-in-chief stopped him and asked him to watch his language and not to forget who he was talking to. He then apologized for his subordinate, which was a clear abuse of authority. By the way, this man's name is William, he is a deputy captain. There is a long road ahead, everyone needs air and entertainment. First of all, it will help not to think much about the war. Also, the man emphasized that Travis does not need to pay attention to the opinion of subordinates because after all they are not the ones who will represent the family. In any case, the guy is not used to this attitude, he would have no problem being able to ignore it. When the guys moved into the game, they immediately started a fight with some huge dragon. To finish it almost instantly, the guy used a bomb called Salamander Tears. It's a magical weapon whose effect is 3.000 damage for one hit. The only downside is that it's too expensive, but 3,000 damage with no mana cost can't be cheap. Eventually, after finishing the fight, the guy reached level 80, and at the same moment, the main god of the game moved them to a secret room. This meant that the 4th level quest was about to begin. In just a few minutes, in front of the guys appears just a huge monster, which has as much as 32,000 units of health. This is just incredible figures. To be honest, it is still hard to imagine how to fight with such as he. The most important thing is to deal with it before they get to the Western Command. The liches themselves are strong monsters and serious opponents, but this one at first glance seems slow and stupid. Let's see what he really is. The first thing that has already gone wrong, the enemy started attacking before the guys got ready. He absolutely does not care about this feature. This led to the guy being wounded in the first few seconds of the fight, not a very comforting start. Feeling his superiority, the monster openly started laughing and talking about how sweet the sound of shattered bones sounds. The guy sincerely believed that he would be able to return, but alas, it did not happen. At this moment, he is in so much pain that even his thoughts are starting to get confused. But the way he laughs so loudly, it's getting more and more annoying by the second. At one point Travis realized that this monster was very similar to his brother Oliver. They were practically identical, except for their looks, of course. And then used a skill called Fireball and launched it. Favor at the very last moment the guys managed to move to the other side, it was very close. While the monster was bewildered by what happened, the guys suddenly decided to attack. For now, the main task for Carla is to make the enemy unable to attack properly, and Travis in turn will prepare everything necessary. The best way to defeat the Lich is an enchanted weapon with a blessing effect. As soon as it appeared on his hands, Travis immediately began to attack hard. From that moment on, the enemy's health began to decrease at a tremendous rate. He even began to resent that the magic stick was used against him, as if it was unfair. But as they say in war, all means are good. To somehow stop this total humiliation, the monsters decided to put a wall of fire between them. But luckily even this trick didn't help him. The guy passed through the wall without any problems, and started to attack further. To say that Lich was surprised is just not to say anything. At that moment Travis imagined in his head that he was beating his brother. It gave him an incredible motivation to fight to the last. In the end, the quest of the 4th level was completed, but because of the numerous wounds, and a large amount of wasted mana, the guy just fell to the floor and for some time could not breathe normally. To save him, Carla urgently took out one of the gift ampoules, and made her master drink, so that slowly he began to recover. Travis was pleasantly surprised that his companion was able to open the inventory at the right moment, and take the owner's things. She was really capable. When the guy was fully recovered, the system started sending him a lot of notifications, with congratulations and gifts, but most importantly the guys were moved to a room with a new chest. It was decided not to drag out the intrigue, and immediately open. Already by tradition, the guy received a huge sum of 500 billion luts, and all-round goggles. At first glance they look quite ordinary, but they cannot be, because they were invented by Lucas himself. To study their functionality in more detail, I had to look at their description. As it turned out, they give a lot of advantages, but the most striking of them is the ability to see through obstacles, and the ability to accurately determine whether a person is lying or not. Meanwhile, the boys finally arrived at the Western Command. Those who met them were surprised, to say the least, that Travis had arrived and not the second son who was bigger. They even tried to talk quietly among themselves about it, but the guy stopped them and said he could hear everything. The captains immediately turned around and said they were very happy to see him, and called all the bad rumors just rumors. Then they got to know each other a little better. Travis was actually honored to talk to them, but unfortunately the occasion wasn't the best. First, the guys checked to see how many troops the guy brought with him. The base showed 5 officers and 50 knights. That's right. Well, for some reason they forgot to mention 1,000 infantry. They smiled and said that infantry is not necessary to take into account at all, because it is the officers of one squad to decide the outcome of this war. Because the officer of the first squad can only cope with a mage of at least level 7, and such in the world in principle, there are quite a few. As far as the boy knew, it was Lucas who had introduced officers of the first squad into military practice when he was alive. When all the questions were settled, Travis ducked and left the building. The first thing he did was inform his men that they were now a 2nd brigade. It's been a whole week since he got here, and in that time he's found his idol, Commander Otis, because the best commander is the one who's not here all the time. It was not long before the war started, and he was doing his own thing. His actions were inexplicable, but he was free to play while he was away. When suddenly, right during the gameplay, Carla reported that someone had entered the room uninvited. The guy instantly left the game to find out what the reason was for such an insolent invasion of privacy. As it turned out, it was the very man with whom he had a conflict on the airplane. Until that moment, he thought that Carla was just an ordinary fragile girl, but when she managed to stop him, the intruder began to think. To find out in advance what the purpose of this insolent officer James came here, the guy put on magic glasses, which told him everything at once. At this moment this type is at least in a strong aggression. When Travis got out of bed, he immediately told the officer that he had better explain himself. He said spending so much time playing games could be bad for his body. He just wanted to make sure he was okay, and Carla approached him. Anyway, the guy warned her to text if anything serious happened. So what we have here is an officer barging into the brigadier's room uninvited. Travis decided not to be modest, and openly asked in front of everyone what was the purpose of this intrusion, robbery, or to take a life. James, of course, immediately began to justify himself, saying that he had never thought of such a thing. But if it was true, then he would have to find a more convincing explanation for his behavior. Then the guy asked Carla what had happened while he was playing. The girl reported that the officer had not come here with good intentions, because he had treated her rather rudely. From these words we can understand that James made an attempt to take Carla somewhere. When the man heard this, he went off like a step and insulted the gentleman's chosen one. He thought all these words were slander, and that the word of some girl was not above an officer. As he looked on, he realized that those who had come with him seemed to be on his side. Travis once again announced that James was a violent violator of discipline, and his actions were more like mutiny, so he should be judged as a mutineer, harshly and mercilessly. All his life the guy has been quiet, but it's not because he's kind, it's because he wanted to survive. In these parts Anna can't follow him, so there's no point in giving in anymore. It's a great opportunity to show them that Travis is an unusual guy who plays games from morning till night, but a real personality. Suddenly one of the military men came running and informed Deputy Commander William that Travis was urgently summoning him to his office, arguing that the brigadier was about to take the life of one of the officers. William doesn't like to take orders, but in this case he couldn't refuse. On arrival and on the spot he immediately got the dagger that was going to do it in his hands. For some reason it was already bloody. The boy earnestly asked to hurry up, but the deputy commander was a little late, so one blow had to be delivered. At this time James was already lying on the floor, and because of the intense pain he couldn't even move. This whole situation made William very angry, but for now he held back, and culturally decided to ask what was going on here, and how grown men allowed this to happen. Travis immediately said with a smile on his face that a knight who harassed girls was not a knight to him personally, and he was 100% sure that the deputy was of the same opinion. At this point, the man finally gave vent to his emotions, and before the guy personally apologized and said that it was his fault. At the same moment James was removed from his post, then came the order to take his equipment and send him to prison indefinitely, and the 3 who came with him were also locked up, because they were accomplices. Such as they were, there was no place for them here, the war was over for them. And it is no longer negotiable, for what has been done will be punished accordingly. Since Travis didn't like the smell of blood, he decided to go to another room while the place was being cleaned. The deputy immediately realized that Travis would now fully show who he really was. It must have been hard to endure it for so long and not show his gut. When the guys moved to another room, of course they went right back into the game. At the moment they are having a fierce battle against some monster, for now they are on the defensive, because they can understand at what point it is necessary to strike. So far during the whole fight, it was realized that the opponent was always hitting in the blind spot, and still managed to keep his distance. At one point, the enemy felt a strong confidence in himself, because he received almost no damage, and decided to take a risk, namely in the open attack specifically on Travis. It was a pretty stupid move on his part, because the guy at least fights not alone. Carla just waited for the perfect moment, and give a good blow with the shield right on the head, which basically turned out to be the last one, and the guy in turn just in case and finished him off with a magic wand. In another chest the guys usually got a large amount of money, and unique items under, namely the magic staff of Istra, and armor. New equipment. This is very good. Lucas as always puts in chests all the best. As suddenly someone came into the room again. The man said he felt the presence of a strong energy, so he decided to come in and see if everything was okay. Travis said he was just going through his artifacts. That's why you should be worried. Everything's fine here. Since everything's fine, he apologized and went about his business. Such a strong energy flow was because of the sword that the guy had gotten. This kind of weapon is mainly used by first squad officers. It's incredibly strong. If you recharge it like a battery, even the weakest person can use the strength of a first squad officer. About the officer's magic equipment, it is designed to increase his power. Unlike mana, aura cannot be artificially created. We should check to see if this magician's gear has those properties too. Now Travis could see why everyone wanted Lucas' fate so badly. It had been a full 2 weeks since the boy had been appointed representative of House Lawrence, and was preparing an army to fight against the Croizon Empire. The feeling that you are not conflicted is about to begin has dulled. The army was simply idle. No action on the part of the opponent has been observed. After that incident with James, the guy is feared and no one wants anything to do with him. Travis is fine with that. Let everyone know what he's really like. Another surprising fact. William's really starting to show respect, even though he doesn't say it outright. His glasses will speak for him. But by and large, all this does not matter. The main thing is that the guy was not disturbed during the game, and he was able to achieve his goals without any problems. Once again, Travis checked the personal statistics of his companion, and noticed this new point of emotion. At the moment, she is experiencing happiness. It's amazing, it's never happened before. I wonder what makes her happy. Maybe it's the walk. If it is, she's like a puppy. As strange as this country sounds, even a homunculus has emotions. Travis also realized that he knew almost nothing about her. Except there are things she likes and things she doesn't like, but emotionally she doesn't even show it. When the guys finally arrived at the beautiful sunny clearing, Clara's emotional status changed again. Now the girl's emotional status is very happy. In that case, Travis made a firm decision for himself that he would go out for a walk more often with his assistant. Suddenly, right in front of this, some shy guy turns up, and at one point very loudly utters a very strange phrase, "Would you like to have a drink with me, Brigadier?" By the way, this boy's name is Donald. The glasses make it clear that he is experiencing a strong style of action, and the guys who are standing behind him are having too much fun. They probably put him up to it and made him say it. At the moment, Travis realized that now he has no desire to understand these childish pranks at all, so he went on. But he immediately turned around and started asking Donald why he was a knight in the first place. Instead of answering the question normally, the frightened kid started apologizing and called the act inappropriate. While watching his personal statistics, a strange thing was noticed. Namely, earlier, Travis had not yet met anyone with special too high talents. This boy definitely has a rare special trait and a great talent in magic. I wonder why he allows himself to be bullied. This type could have achieved much more if he had made the decision to become a mage. And these two were told not to bother him again, or else there would be serious problems. Travis didn't feel like deciding anything, so he didn't stick up for the guy. But how much good his talents could do. If we give the resurrection of a forward officer, he could literally become an invincible battle mage. Of course, talent isn't everything, but since he managed to become a knight at such a young age, he has a good chance of becoming a good mage. Taking Donald under his wing would be a good idea, but Otis is obviously an obstacle, as this young lad, a knight from a completely different county. To realize this idea, you need to get Otis' permission. At best, he can be bribed. That's the only realistic scenario. It is necessary to think about it once again in the future and make a decision. While it is difficult to answer the question of how useful high and very high talents are, but it is necessary to gather a team. And now is the time to do it, while the boy is as far away from his stepmother as possible. In any case, Travis, even at the moment, had something to do, so it was necessary to settle old matters as soon as possible in order to take up new ones. Meanwhile, Donald was walking down the corridor, unable to get Travis' words out of his head that he would be better off as a magician. As it turned out, Otis was not waiting for him alone, but together with Mr. Travis. Now the young man was eager to know the purpose for which he had been summoned here, especially since two of the foremen wanted to talk to him. Of course, even though they already knew each other, Otis introduced the guest next to him. From now on, Donald has a new lord, and he pledges to serve him faithfully. This whole situation reminded Travis of a moment in his past life. When China lost a soccer game to South Korea, one fan wondered, didn't China, with a population of 1.4 billion, have at least 11 normal soccer players? Another replied that no, there are not, because the Chinese potential good soccer player is most likely to be digging in the ground or on a farm somewhere. No matter how much talent a person has, and if they don't have a social ladder, their talent is lost. If you think about it more globally, you'll come to the conclusion that a lot of young people are just wasted. At least Donald is a prime example of this, a failed knight who is bullied by his peers. And so they've gotten nowhere in life. Even this seemingly ordinary maid, because the guy sees right through her, he can tell for sure what her calling is in magic, and she doesn't even know it. Thanks to the glasses, you can see that she has a large amount of mana stored in her, she grasps information very easily, and her intelligence is high, but at the same time she works as an ordinary maid. To help this girl, the guy had to buy her from the mistress. Of course, no one understood his actions, but the result will not take long to wait. And this guy has a very high physical fitness, and a good aura. All his life he has worked in a mine, and now Travis is allowing him the opportunity to become a good knight. At this moment, the gentleman brought them to the store to choose their cultural outfits. At the moment, the boys are 100 kilometers away from the camp, at the royal palace. All the prospective students are very confused. They've obviously never been to a place like this before. The first to cope was a man named Alex. He has developed qualities like leadership very high, and a special trait, the ability to persuade people. Travis asked everyone once again not to look at the price tag, but to choose only what they really like. If you don't develop these people's talents, they will remain ordinary workers. The guy will send them out of the camp for training. Each of them will have a special approach, where they will be 100% likely to reveal all their hidden talents. In the end, after quite a long period of time, the guys finally decided on their choice in terms of clothing, but when they saw the place where they would study, they were very pleasantly surprised, because they had not even come close to such places. It was also obligatory for Travis to appoint a servant and a butler for his pupils, and from that moment on all their energies and attention should be directed only to their studies. He also paid all his pupils an allowance, including compensation for dismissal from work. They all raised their hands to their heads as one and promised that they would do everything they could to exceed expectations of them. They probably still can't even realize that this is actually happening to them. Also, if the students really prove that Travis is right about them, the salaries will only go up. The guy enviously realized, because of the long absence of any intellectual development, his students may develop more than usual, even despite all the conditions, but in any case, they must do their best not to let him down. If the guys show a clear real desire, Travis will only help them, because under such conditions, it's only a matter of time to achieve the result. After the speech, they promised again that they would do their best and behave very well. And also Travis forgot to add, if anyone tries to apply them to himself with money, just turn to him, because he will give twice as much. In general, this school will be a real haven for all the people Travis has recruited. His main task is to make sure that their talents are divorced, and he will make every effort to do so. Some might say he's overpriced, but it's really an investment in the future. By the way, about Anna, we need to keep her mother safe from her. When Travis openly goes against his brother, we need to think of a place to hide her. Most likely it will be a place like a secure prison. But first, there's one problem that needs to be fixed, and that's surveillance. A few days ago, Oliver called Travis on the phone, and he said, "That's right, hang out with the bad guys like you." It was a shock. How could he even know that the guy had started recruiting students? And now it's all revealed. As it turns out, Anna even decided to send her spy here. But on the one hand, now the brother can be thanked. With this phone call, he confessed to watching his brother's every move, and it was absolutely no problem to find out who the spy was. Of course, the guy started saying he had nothing to do with it, but we know the truth. If this man has a sincere desire to live on this planet, he just has to answer a few questions, and do it as honestly as possible, otherwise it will be very bad. At one point, somehow the spy managed to guess that he is being held by an unusual girl. It is certainly not very good. But he agreed to answer all the questions because he wasn't ready to give up his life like that. So the first question is, how did this spy find him? It was too easy. Oliver has another rat in the deportation office who's been leaking information. And according to his readings, he's really not lying. Well, since this spy is an ordinary hired man, and holds no grudge against Travis, the lad had the brilliant idea of suggesting that he go against his master, and if he wants to live, It is of course impossible to refuse, for any refusal will lead to only one outcome. Not a favorable one. From now on, the bandit now has a new master. He is probably himself in shock at what is happening, and already 10 times regretted that he got involved with this family. No difficult tasks will be set, just need to send everyday reports on what is happening in the house. And his brother has to be told that Travis is doing the same things he always does, like playing games and socializing with the homeless. That's what they agreed to, of course. There's no paycheck. Let him be thankful he's still alive. Oliver had sent more than one spy, and luckily one of them had already been caught in the brigadier's quarters, which caused a lot of problems. It's all because Oliver didn't listen to his father and continued to do things his way. Now he's going to be furious because he promised Travis that he wouldn't be followed. Just at that moment, the brother called the spy Travis had caught and asked him to keep spying on him, at least until his father stopped being mad at him. Now the guy has his own personal spy, much better than a regular spy. All other spies that will be caught in the future will have to be recruited in the same way as this one. Then the plan will work perfectly. It will allow to fool Oliver 100%. By the way, the training of students went as well, now in the subordination of the guy 20 very gifted recruits. They all worked very hard, for which Travis is very grateful to them, and they are grateful to him for the opportunity to learn. In the meantime, the guy has already reached level 159, with only one level left to go, and he will reach the 6th level of mage, which is an incredible performance and incredible power.